The bitter wind howled through the Montana wilderness like a vengeful spirit, drowning out Beatrice Zimmerman's ragged breaths as she stumbled through knee-deep snow. Her wedding ring, a cold, heavy reminder of her captivity, had been cast away hours ago, disappearing into the pristine white blanket that stretched endlessly before her. Freedom had come at a terrible price, and now, with night falling and her strength waning, Beatrice wondered if she'd only traded one death for another. The December of 1878 had been particularly harsh in Willow Creek, Montana territory. The small mining settlement nestled in the shadow of the mountains had seen 3 feet of snow in as many days. For most, it meant hunkering down beside warm hearths. For Beatrice, it had meant opportunity, the only chance she might ever have to escape the man who had promised to be her husband but had become her tormentor. Her fingers had long since gone numb, her threadbare coat providing little protection against the merciless elements. The gash on her cheek where Harold's ring had caught her face had stopped bleeding, the blood frozen on her skin. She had been running, when she could for what felt like days, but had likely only been hours. "Just keep moving," she whispered to herself, the words forming small clouds of vapor that were immediately torn away by the wind. Just keep moving. The advertisement had seemed like salvation 6 months ago in Boston. Seeking bride of gentle disposition and hardy constitution, passage paid, comfortable living guaranteed. How desperate she had been after her parents' passing, with no prospects and no inheritance. How naive to believe that Harold Blackmore, a man whose letters spoke of tenderness and prosperity, would be her savior. The reality had been a crude cabin, a man whose gentle facade had crumbled the moment they were alone, and a life that couldn't be called living at all. 3 months of hell before this chance came. Harold passed out from whiskey, the door unlocked, and the storm providing cover for her flight. The world tilted suddenly. Beatrice realized she had fallen only when she felt the cold snow against her face. It felt almost warm now, inviting. Perhaps it wouldn't be so terrible to rest, just for a moment. A distant bark jolted her back to awareness. Dogs meant people. People meant Harold might find her. With a strength born of fear, she pushed herself up and stumbled forward, but her legs betrayed her, and she collapsed again. The barking grew closer, accompanied by the crunch of approaching hoofbeats. Terror gave her one last surge of energy. She crawled behind a large pine, hoping the fading light and falling snow would hide her tracks. "Whoa there, Ranger! What have you found?" The voice was deep but gentle, nothing like Harold's whiskey-roughened growl. Beatrice held her breath as a massive black and white dog bounded through the snow, stopping just short of her hiding place. The animal didn't bark again, but stood alert, tail wagging slightly as a horse and rider approached. "Well now, what in tarnation?" The man dismounted with fluid grace that belied his large frame. In the dim light, she could make out broad shoulders under a heavy sheepskin coat, and the gleam of a rifle held casually in one gloved hand. His face was shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat crusted with snow. "Madam, you alive under there?" He knelt a respectful distance away, and she caught a glimpse of concerned eyes beneath the hat brim. Beatrice tried to speak, but her throat was too dry, her lips too cracked. All that emerged was a faint whimper. "I ain't gonna hurt you," he said, his voice soft like he was talking to a spooked horse. "Name's Zane Quincy. I've got a ranch about 2 miles east of here. You're half frozen and night's coming fast. Let me help you." Fear warred with desperation. If she refused his help, she would die in this storm. If she accepted, she might be trading one danger for another. But something in his voice, something in the careful way he kept his distance while offering aid, made her decision for her. She nodded once, a barely perceptible movement. "Good," he said, relief evident in his tone. "I'm going to come closer now, all right?" Another nod, and he moved forwards, removing his coat in one smooth motion and wrapping it around her before she could protest. The warmth of it, his warmth was immediate and overwhelming. "Can you stand?" he asked. Beatrice tried, but her legs had long since given up. Without a word, Zane carefully lifted her, one arm behind her back, the other under her knees. She was too exhausted to resist, her head falling against his chest as he carried her to his horse. "Ranger, home," he commanded the dog, who took off immediately through the trees. To Beatrice he murmured, "Hold on now." I've got you." He mounted with her still in his arms, an impressive feat of strength that she barely registered through her haze of cold and fatigue. As the horse began moving through the snow, the steady rhythm and the solid warmth of the man holding her lulled Beatrice into the first moment of security she'd felt in months. "Stay with me." His voice came from somewhere above her. "What's your name, madam?" Beatrice," she managed through chattering teeth. "Beatrice Zimmerman." "Well, Miss Zimmerman, you just hold on. We're going home." Home. Such a simple word. Yet it had been so long since she'd had one. As consciousness slipped away, Beatrice wondered if she would ever know what home truly meant again. When awareness returned, it came in fragments. Warmth, the crackling of a fire, the weight of blankets, the smell of coffee, and something savory. For a moment, Beatrice thought she might be back in Boston, that the nightmare of the past months had been just that, a nightmare. But the unfamiliar ceiling above her, rough-hewn logs rather than plaster, brought reality crashing back. She bolted upright, instantly regretting it as pain lanced through her head and limbs. "Easy now," came the same deep voice from the forest. "You're safe here." Zane Quincy sat in a chair a few feet from the bed, his large frame somehow not imposing in the warm light of the cabin. Without his hat, she could see his features clearly, a strong jaw darkened with stubble, straight nose, and eyes the color of summer skies. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30 to her 22 years. "Where am I?" Beatrice's voice was barely a whisper, her throat raw. "My ranch, just outside of Willits." He stood slowly, as if not wanting to startle her, and moved to a pot hanging near the fire. "You've been asleep since yesterday evening, had me worried for a spell." Yesterday evening. She'd lost an entire night and day. "Your dog found me." Zane nodded, pouring something into a cup. "Ranger's got a nose for trouble. Lucky for you." He approached the bed, offering the cup. "It's just broth, but it'll help warm you from the inside." Beatrice took it with trembling hands, careful not to touch his fingers. The broth was rich and salty, and she hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first sip hit her empty stomach. "Thank you," she said after a few moments, the warmth of the liquid lending strength to her voice. "For helping me." "No need for thanks. Couldn't leave you out there." He returned to his chair, giving her space. "Though I am wondering what a woman was doing alone in that storm, dressed like it was a spring day rather than the dead of winter." She clutched the cup tighter, eyes dropping to the worn quilt covering her. Only then did she realize she was wearing different clothes, a man's shirt that swallowed her frame, and woolen socks that weren't her own. Seeing her alarmed expression, Zane quickly explained, "Mrs. Porter from the neighboring farm came over to tend to you. She changed your clothes, yours were soaked through. She left some of her daughter's things for when you were feeling stronger." Relief flooded her, followed quickly by shame at her assumption. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to—" "No apologies needed," he interrupted gently. "You've clearly been through something terrible. You don't owe me any explanations." But she did owe him, at least the truth of why he might be harboring a fugitive wife. "I was running away," she admitted, her voice small. "From my husband." Zane's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. "Did he give you that?" He gestured to her cheek, where she knew the cut would be visible. Beatrice nodded, one hand unconsciously rising to touch the wound. "Among other things." "I see." Just 2 words, but they contained volumes of understanding. "Well, you're welcome to stay here until you're recovered. After that, we can figure out your next steps." "He'll be looking for me," she warned, fear creeping back into her voice. "Harold doesn't let go of what he considers his property easily." "Property," Zane repeated, the word sour on his tongue. "Some men don't deserve the air they breathe." He stood again, moving to stoke the fire. "Don't you worry about that now. My ranch is isolated, and not many folks know I'm out here. You rest and regain your strength." The simple kindness of it, no questions, no judgment, just shelter offered freely, nearly broke something inside Beatrice that had been holding together by sheer will. She blinked rapidly, determined not to cry in front of this stranger who had already seen her at her weakest. "I can work," she offered, "to pay for my keep. I'm good with a needle, and I can cook and clean." Zane turned from the fire, a slight smile softening his features. "We'll talk about that when you can stand without looking like you might topple over. For now, Just focus on getting better." As if summoned by their conversation, the large black and white dog ranger padded into the cabin from another room, coming straight to the bedside and resting his muzzle on the edge of the mattress, eyes fixed on Beatrice. "He's been checking on you every hour," Zane said, amusement coloring his tone. "Think he's appointed himself your guardian." Hesitantly, Beatrice reached out to touch the dog's head. Ranger immediately leaned into her hand, his tail wagging slowly. "He likes you," Zane observed. "He's a good judge of character." "I hope so," she murmured, the simple affection from the animal soothing something ragged inside her. "I hope so." For the first time in months, surrounded by the warmth of the cabin and the unexpected kindness of both man and beast, Beatrice allowed herself to think that perhaps, just perhaps, she might have found a temporary haven in the wilderness. The next few days passed in a rhythm that was foreign, yet comforting to Beatrice. She slept much of the first day, her body demanding recovery from both the physical ordeal of her escape and the months of tension that had preceded it. When awake, she watched Zane move about his cabin with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to solitude and self-reliance. By the third day, she was strong enough to sit at the rough-hewn table for meals, wrapped in a quilt against the lingering weakness. Zane was an unexpectedly good cook, though he dismissed her compliments with a shrug. "Man gets tired of beans and bacon quick enough," he said, setting down a plate of venison stew before her. Learning to cook proper was just survival. "Is it just you here?" she asked, curiosity finally overcoming her wariness. "No family?" Something flickered across his face, not pain exactly, but a shadow of it. "Just me and Ranger for the past 5 years. Had a brother once, but he caught a bad case of gold fever and headed to California. Never heard from him after." "I'm sorry," Beatrice said softly. "Life happens," he replied, the simplicity of the statement somehow encompassing all the complexities of loss and adaptation. "What about you? Before all this, I mean." She stirred her stew, gathering courage. She'd told him only the bare minimum so far, that she'd come west as a mail-order bride and found herself trapped in a violent marriage. "I was alone in Boston after my parents died of influenza last winter. No siblings, no close relatives willing to take in a grown woman with no fortune." The memory of those desperate months still stung. "The advertisement seemed like providence, a chance at a new life, a family of my own perhaps. And instead you got Harold," Zane said, his voice gentle despite the hardness that crept into his eyes whenever her husband's name was mentioned. "Yes." She couldn't elaborate further, not yet. The humiliation and fear were still too raw, too close. Zane seemed to sense this, changing the subject with natural ease. "Mrs. Porter left some clothes that should fit you better than my old shirts, and she promised to come by tomorrow with some proper women's things. She's a good sort, won't ask too many questions." "You trust her?" Beatrice couldn't keep the doubt from her voice. "With my life," he confirmed without hesitation. "Her husband and I served together in the War of the Rebellion," he clarified, using the term she'd heard more commonly in the East. "When Matthew didn't make it back, I made sure she and the children got here safely. We look out for each other." The Civil War had ended 13 years ago, she calculated. Zane must have been very young when he fought, barely more than a boy. "Thank you," she said, instead of pursuing that line of